the committee, if they have anything, committee members, I'm going to check with the joint chair next. Then I'm going to ask any of the committee members if they have an opening comment. I ask Vice President Stewart for her, since she is the person that thought this legislation, and then Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, who has another meeting she has to get to speak after that. So with that, does anybody on the joint committee, please, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this joint committee on this issue, and I also want to extend my appreciations to Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr,
yes,
and Senator Mary Washington for introducing the enabling legislation in Annapolis, and from one duo in Annapolis to the duo here in Rockville of Council Members Fanny Gonzalez and Stewart for introducing the local legislation that is aimed at keeping our residents safe. And safety on our roads applies not only to walking, biking, and driving, but listening and hearing. And we all know that there are too many complaints that we all receive about high traffic noise or the noise of particular vehicles, and look forward to working through this legislation to try and quiet our roads in a safe and efficient manner. So thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you. Council Vice President, please.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr and Senator Mary Washington, who did the enabling legislation to allow us to have this pilot program here in Montgomery County. When we worked, and I want to thank Ms. Wellens for all her work on this, when Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez and I worked on this with Ms. Wellens, we had to closely follow the guidelines set by the state. And so in our discussion today, I imagine there may be some questions, but as I've emphasized with many people, this is a pilot. We get 3 cameras. That is it for all of Montgomery County during this pilot. But I do think the pilot program is really important to establishing how we can address excessive vehicle noise caused by defective or altered mufflers and exhaust systems. And just as a reminder, it is current law right now that it is illegal and unlawful to actually modify your exhaust systems, and that the penalty we are looking at that is set by the state legislation would be a civil offense. And the importance of this, as we dug into it, is the disruption it causes, but also the health implications that I don't think many people understand when we're thinking about noise pollution, because we don't talk about noise pollution as much as we talk about other types of pollution. And so as we dug into this, we saw that noise pollution that can cause physical and mental health issues in children and adults, and is linked to depression, heart disease, strokes, and other cognitive impairments. And so, we're looking forward to this moving forward as the pilot, and hopefully it will go successfully, and we will get more noise cameras here in Montgomery County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to both committees for holding this work session. Personal thanks to Council Vice President Stewart for being part of this duo, and Delegate Polakovich-Carr for her leadership on this issue, in particular at the Maryland Assembly. I'm only going to add one more thing, is that I have received so many comments from people, everybody very excited about it, but also wanting to do more than what we're proposing here in front of us in the County Council. Just a reminder, as Council Vice President mentioned, the limits are within what we are authorized by the state legislation, period. And this is a pilot, and I'm hoping that other counties also follow or lead. This reminded me of the tax credit that we just approved for veterans. When people wanted to go beyond the state legislation, we cannot do it. We're bound by this. And with that, I want to also thank Ms. Christine Wellens for all her work. You have been, amazing as always. And I look forward to the conversation here. And I had to leave at 1:30 because I have PHP committee upstairs. That's why.
And she's concerned about the traffic going up the steps. So just wanted to mention that. And with that, if I could please ask the panel to introduce themselves, and then we're going to turn to Ms. Wellens. Yeah, you need to touch there we go.
I'm Chris Dibry. I'm the Director of Automated Enforcement for Montgomery County Police. I'm Warren Jensen. I'm the director of the County Police's Traffic Operations Division.
And I'm Assistant Chief Dave McBain, Field Services Bureau Chief.
You know, who basically lives in this building now. I
feel
think
like
we've
it.
seen you 3 times a week. Yeah.
I signed up for that.
Yeah. Yes, you did. Thank goodness. I'm glad you did. Please.
Willie Morales, Office of Management Budget.
Very good. And with that, Ms. Wellens, could you please lead us through the packet?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, council members. The packet consists of a couple of discussion items, one potential amendment, and a lot of background information. As the code lead sponsors explained, this pilot program originates through state enabling legislation. The enabling legislation is quite thorough and comprehensive about the contours of the program, how citations are issued, the amount of the fine, etc. And as was noted, limits us to 3 cameras to start with. And the pilot program, unless it's extended, would sunset in June 2026. Drawing your attention to the items in the packet on page 4 of the staff memorandum, you see some background information. There's a nice photo for you of a noise camera in New York City, or noise abatement camera, and some information about the program in other jurisdictions, including there's a very comprehensive study that was done in the UK regarding these types of noise cameras, which is really interesting and consists of multi-parts. Should anybody be interested or, have trouble going to sleep or something, I recommend it. So the first item for discussion is, it's noted as item number 3, location of noise abatement monitoring systems, and, an invitation, if it pleases the chair, for the police department to talk about how we figure out where to locate the systems.
Please. Who's going to?
Oh, go ahead. So, I mean, the unfortunately, like we said, the time frame is the biggest issue with the legislation. To try to get these camera systems up and running in a short period of time, the initial cost layout is only a very small part. That's basically the cost of the cameras. The true cost is in the back end. So, like with our speed and red light vendor, that's where the story even begins. That's the tracking of this technology. What we'll be looking for in a contract for Montgomery County, because this is new and emerging technology. So in just the 2 years that Delegate Klobuchar had brought the legislation forward, it changed dramatically from my guys, or our folks on the back office that would be doing the processing, would actually have to determine which vehicle was actually making the noise, to then less than a year later, there's now a red dot on the violating vehicle. There's another manufacturer that just started in the United States that is offering the solution as well. So we wouldn't want to get into a contract where we're limited as to the technology that with our speed and red light program. Basically, our camera systems say we get the latest and greatest in technology as soon as it becomes available. We get it implemented into our program. So it's also finding a vendor that would be understanding of that, and that at the end of this, if we don't get the pilot continued, they have to keep the citations, those unadjudicated citations, forever. It's not a short-term process. So the implementation of it is huge when you come to the back end. The technology is getting there, it's emerging, but the back office requirements that we're going to need with everything we deal with speed and red light, the flagging notices, are people just going to pay it? I wish that there was a little bit more teeth to the fine, and that there was a little more a suspended registration, a little bit something extra that would force people to pay it, because you have a $1,000 exhaust system. I'm going to give you a $75 civil violation for breaking this law, and most violators would probably pay it and move on. They're not going to take the exhaust system off because of that expense. You've got to pay somebody to take it off. So I just wish the fines were a little bit stronger, that it met, like New York. We talked about New York. That's a $1,000 fine, and I believe it's $500 to the shop that actually installed it. That's got some more teeth to the program. So as to the locations that we would put them in, we would have to do some testing. The one manufacturer we talked about from Europe, it's semi-portable. Semi-portable is actually bolted to a pole. So it's just as semi-portable as actually the traffic signal itself. It's bolted to the pole. They offer the technology, and they will link with us online when we contract out to somebody to install it and how to use the system. They don't offer any back end. So that's a huge problem for us that would have to be worked out in an RFP. So to say what the true cost of implementation would be is rather difficult, because with our speed and red light, that's calculated into the cost of the camera. So we actually know what the physical cost of that camera system is. It's the back end that's the biggest part. Can they mail our violations? Can they do follow-ups? The warning letters have to be sent out, the actual flagging with MVA, the banking that they would have to do with our department or with the county. So a lot of back-end stuff needs to come together.
Right. So if I could follow what you just said, parts of it. If someone gets one of these $75 fines, and they don't pay it, then there's no other penalty. You can't withhold their tags.
We can flag your registration, so you won't be able to re-register your vehicle.
So you could withhold their tags. Then,
Yeah.
if that's the case. I see.
The registration,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
That's that.
Go ahead, please.
If you received a citation today,
Yeah.
and decided not to pay, in 3 years when you had to re-register your vehicle is when you would be held accountable.
So
for the fine.
that in itself is a problem. Go ahead, please.
So thank you. And those are conversations we've already started having with Delegate Polakovich-Carr. She understands that the sunset was really fast when she did this, and she asked us how quickly, and I know that we are the first county to be able to be at this point with actual legislation that we're looking at. So I think as we're moving forward in this process, working with you all to hopefully help Delegate Polakovich-Carr see if in this legislative session they can actually get the sunset extended would be really helpful, because they're looking for our feedback on implementation.
And the $75, does that go to the vendor? Does that go to the county? Does that go to the state? How does that work?
That would have to be worked out in the contract with whatever vendor we went with.
But it's not the state's.
No, it's
And
not.
it's
the
not like a
state's.
regular
No.
ticket.
No, if as the years went on, so if you get a school bus ticket and you take it to court and you actually pay at the clerk's office at district court, that money goes to the state's general fund. If you go back to the website before you leave the building and you pay online, that revenue comes in through the county.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for putting it into context, right? Recognizing it is a short window and the investment that's needed. We want to make the most of it, and we want to make this a solid and lasting program. But I want to take a step back for a second, because we're talking about enforcement of a noise ordinance of sorts for modified exhaust systems. And I'm looking at Ms. Wellens on this one. Are those systems already illegal under Maryland state law?
Correct, yes. It would be enforcing, the noise cameras would be assisting with the enforcement of the existing noise regulations under the state law.
So some of the concerns I've heard about this is we are enforcing on the wrong end, right? What, and I don't know who to address this to, but I'll just share my thoughts as folks have shared with me. Why we don't enforce this on the front end, right? Why, whether it is with body shops, or I presume a lot of it is done on driveways, on side streets as well. But AC McMahon, yeah.
Yes, sir. So, I'm not so sure this is the popular way to deal with this, but something I think should be really considered is to kind of marry this with VEIP. And when you go in for...
Can you break up the acronym?
Vehicle emissions.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Not looking to skirt our responsibilities and work with this program, but I think if you could adopt legislation that linked a sound check of an exhaust system through vehicle emissions, and then that vehicle not pass, then it would not be it would not pass its inspection.
Well, and so I appreciate that, and I absolutely support this legislation because it's the only thing in front of us. But it seems like there are different ways to tackle this, and the fact that it is come down from the MVA, right, and the state law with regard to cars, which is they're the ones who have jurisdiction over vehicles themselves. And there's been no action through all those different other government layers. And here we are trying to enforce this, trying to set up a program in a very short window of time when there are other layers that can try and work through it.
I think we see this also with tinted windows, right? We still have
Yeah.
shops in the county, in the state, that are tinting windows just as black as they can get, or 50, 60%. So I agree. There are I don't think we have mechanisms that are holding these companies or these businesses that are outfitting these vehicles that way.
And ultimately, we want to make our roads quieter, but I do wonder about someone who gets the ticket and is like, I just went to the auto body shop and they just did this, and why are they allowed to do this, or why are they doing it if it is illegal? It's just open question.
But that would all come from the state, right? That would all come from the state, right?
The state would have to change the legislation to require it go through vehicle emissions.
And it would be the same for the emissions.
Correct.
Because that's all through the state.
Right.
Please, those
Yeah,
things.
so this was actually explored at a, not this last legislative session in Annapolis, but prior to it. There was legislation that went through and got withdrawn because of some difficulties. And also, as they were doing the investigation of this, they realized what people do is they just modify their muffler, unmodify it, and then modify it again. So it wasn't worth the effort. I believe you'd have to talk to the folks who were pursuing it, but I believe it was 2 legislative sessions ago in Annapolis that it had been introduced and then withdrawn. So that, when Delegate Palakovich Carr took this up, it was looking at what are other jurisdictions, not just in the country but around the world, doing to address this problem, and the noise cameras seemed to be the direction everyone was going in.
In New York, the cameras are used basically to issue a notice that you have to bring your vehicle in for an inspection. So then, to that point, if they were modifying their vehicle and then unmodifying it, if I was a mechanic and putting that car up in the air, I could see what was actually being done to that vehicle.
And I'm supportive of this as well. I candidly haven't spoken to anybody that's not, but because everybody hears this noisy part of our lives. But if you did, if you can get a vendor to do this, how fast could the vendor actually be putting these types of this type of equipment on our streets?
That's another question because of the testing requirements. So it's mirrors like a laser unit that a police officer holds, or our speed cameras. They have to be certified and tested. We have to determine who's going to do that. And because it can't be the vendor, it has to be a third party that does the testing, because it wouldn't be fair to if we said the vendor, yeah, you could test your noise camera and we'll take that as fact. It has to be third party tested, so then we have to find another laboratory to ensure that equipment was reliable and have is there a company out there that will do that for us, that would actually give us a court certified certificate to say that this thing is tried and tested and you can issue violations off of it.
Right. And to the chair's point, the right now, if it's illegal, I'm assuming we have cited some people but it's difficult to catch because you actually have to be there while they're doing it. How do we cite them now? Is there a certification for the machine that you use to say that how does that work?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right now, currently, the law enforcement officers that are doing any type of traffic enforcement on the street, they do it pretty much by ear because the statute reads that it's modified. So you don't quite have to be an expert in the field to know that this is much, much louder than the rest of the
Right.
motoring public. So you would just testify to that in court. As you said, Mr. Chair, it's not a very common charge, but it does happen, and I would say it happens in the more egregious cases, the really loud mufflers, the people that are driving it that way intentionally. If you have loud mufflers on an old hot rod, you can still kind of drive that quietly if you would like to be respectful in the neighborhood. So I think we're catching the egregious ones. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks. Anybody else? Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I wanted to just take a look at the Res J impact statement and lift that up for discussion. They had a suggested possible amendment or policy option for us to consider, which was to engage BIPOC community stakeholders to update the bill, draft Method 2 regulations, and develop annual reporting requirements to the council. So just wanted to lift that up for consideration with colleagues. I'll note that on that front, I mean, this is a pilot program, and so how much we really want to build out in terms of infrastructure is limited here. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're using the pilot to assess exactly these types of impacts. So maybe I'll turn it back to you all first to talk about the types of data and reflection that you're able to do within the current parameters. With the mic.
Button,
Yeah.
sorry.
You need to put your noise on there. Yeah, go ahead.
It would be pretty limited. California Highway Patrol they're required by legislation to pilot the top 3 companies that are producing this type of technology, but the report's not due until 2027, I believe. So to get into a pilot where we could see actually testing, training my staff that currently do speed and red light, but also the requirement in this bill also requires a police officer to certify the violation as well.
Mm-hmm.
So then they're going to have to meet the requirement. There was also a question during some of the meetings with the company from Europe. They don't have the same requirements for privacy and not wanting unattended individuals staying on the side of the road that may be captured in the image. They didn't understand why that was a problem for us, but we would have to ensure that through the testing that any pedestrian traffic or someone crossing the street was not part of the violation and could be AI'd out. In conversation, it seemed to be pretty okay, but we haven't seen it in practice. So to actually see the system in a working violation position, I'm not sure.
I'm going to pause because I know Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez has to go. So we'll
Please.
come back. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's very considerate. I will say when I read the racial equity and social justice impact statement, it did not give me a good feeling just because it made the assumption that we haven't engaged with people of color, which is false. I have personally talked about this issue in Spanish, in TV stations, especially looking at the numbers, how high it is with Latino. If you look at page 17, circle page 17, I have talked about this in town hall meetings, and people do want this. At the end of the day, everybody, regardless of your background, want to live in neighborhoods that are safe, that you can cross the street without having somebody, zooming in and killing people, which is what's happening right now too. I do associate the noise issue with speed. I do. And I see it in my own district. So I want to make sure that it's absolutely clear that I have personally engaged my community that looks like me on this issue, and I will continue to do so in a responsible manner. That's all. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to take up.
Thank you. I know you'd much rather stay with us.
Oh,
I know
yes,
that. I know that.
absolutely.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And, and I'm thinking about as we look forward, and how we want to handle pilot programs and what we want to look at in the wake of that, that this is a good piece of legislation for a good opportunity for us to be doing that. It's also a complicated one because it's a new technology, and the types of data that we're able to collect from this are obviously different than, if an officer pulls somebody over, et cetera. It's a whole different type of, it's a whole different data set. So I don't know what the answer is here, but I do think that it's important for us to consider.
Thank you. Vice President Stewart.
Yeah, I think in terms of the engagement, oh, sorry, did you want to go first?
No, that's all right.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
I
You all
think it's
just have to
important.
throw
I
something
think
at
one
me.
of the things that surprised me in the racial equity and social justice was that they didn't, there's a lot of reporting required by the state on this. And so I guess the question I had is what else are we going to require? I think what the state is requiring it covers it. I didn't see anything missing from what the state does, so I didn't feel like on reporting there was anything we needed to add to that. In terms of engagement, we can always do better engagement and understanding the time crunch for the pilot and weighing all those things. But as Councilmember Natalie Fanny Gonzalez said, like I think probably every single one of our offices has engaged with constituents on this issue to talk about it. So yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. Wholeheartedly support this program. So in terms of where the cameras will go, everyone's lobbying for it to be in their backyard. Me too. So two questions. One is, how will you go about that process? And is there any limitation, whether it's county or state roads?
The limitation right now is with the technology. So with the current solution, only monitors 1.5 travel lanes. So if you're thinking about New Hampshire Avenue, Randolph Road, we're not capturing all 3 travel lanes on each direction. So the 3 camera systems, if I put 2 on one side of the street, I could get the whole street. Or we just have to look at intersections that will, or roadways that would be more conducive to the limitations of the technology.
So I live right in between 118 Great Seneca Highway and it's speedways, both of them. So when you say 1.5 lanes to cover the entire highway, Great Seneca, it's 4 lanes, it's 2 lanes in each direction. So you could only cover one direction. Is that?
Yeah, I would have to have 2 cameras going one direction to get all the travel lanes.
Right, and then a road like 118 is 6 lanes, so you wouldn't be able to get it even with it. Okay, got it. Okay.
As long as it was with the understanding that that's all I'm capturing. I mean, we can put them on those roadways, but that's the maximum amount of lanes I'm going to capture.
Sure. And then, so how will you go about determining where the cameras will go?
We'd have to work with whoever would be awarded the contract on how best to deploy the technology within the limitations it has.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Just taking
Thanks.
something else into consideration is like if we put them in like a central business district or a more populated area, how does that sound work with the buildings that's around?
Yeah, and I was thinking from the speeding, because I agree with Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, or I don't know who said it, the issue of speed. It's not just the souped up car. It's because they want to go fast, and that very often it'll be on the larger roadways with fewer lights. And so it's going to be an interesting discussion as to where they should go. So I appreciate that.
And I'm assuming for State Highway that you'd have to get their okay anyhow. So that's another layer for what we want.
Yeah,
Chair
we would
Glass.
need a permit similar to the speed cameras.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for comments and questions. I want to pick up on Councilmember Mink's point and use this as a venue to try and further educate and understand the legislation. First, I'm not sure if I saw if there was a decibel level that was associated with the trigger.
There is, yes, and it's a little bit hard to get to because you have to go to cross references to the other parts of the state law and then go to the Code of Maryland regulations to find them. But it's
not a lack of trying on my end. So
right,
okay.
but it's I believe between 78 and 82 decibels, and then you would have to be 5 above the limit in order to trigger the noise camera violation.
Okay, so 78 to 82, but 5 above that.
Right, and as I understand it, it varies depending upon the posted speed limit.
Got it. So, practical reality, what are we talking about here? what kind of adjustments, what kind of vehicles? Are there any types of vehicles that would already be captured under that because they're classic cars or something?
I would, I don't know the answer to that, but that is certainly something we've talked about. Is some of these vehicles that are coming off the factory are loud, so I'm not so sure where that vehicle would fall into place. If they haven't modified their vehicle, they could very well violate the law. Maybe.
Well, and that's the worst case scenario.
Correct. But I think Captain Jensen actually kind of hit the nail on the head. Is that there are some pretty egregious vehicles out there that have modified to a point where they're just outrageous, and so that would be something that we'd have to consider though. But I don't know what. Without, I guess, going through the testing and starting to capture some of this data, we wouldn't really know what that sounds like.
So we all have in our head, right, what the egregious example is. We can all draw from same life experiences there. But just over this weekend, true story, on Saturday I was driving, and next to me at a red light was a small convertible that was loud. Very loud. I rolled up my window because it was so loud and my EV wasn't making any noise, right? So
he says.
Ask Chevy how much noise the Bolts make, right? Two of us here drive Bolts. So, but the point is, with that car, which was a very nice convertible, I don't know exactly what was under the hood. I'm not a gearhead, but it was loud.
Yeah, I actually think that's why we have to pilot it. I don't know. It would be tough to say what is going to be a violation and what's not. And then real quick, just to kind of piggyback on where we put these camera systems, I don't necessarily think you need to have them on your major arterials in order to be successful. And I think the most important thing is that we don't cram them all down county. I think we spread them out throughout the entire county to be equitable on what we're
fair.
What we're looking at. Up in Germantown, down in Silver Spring, Olney, Wheaton, and we kind of put some thought into where we actually are putting these systems.
So what I'm gathering is, again, the reason why it is a pilot program, to work through all this, see the data that's collected, the tiers of offenders that are registered and captured, and it all makes sense. So we'll be working through a lot. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
In a regular motorcycle right now, do you have any idea where they would fall in the 78 to 82? You don't. Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I just want to make this clear.
We have a motorcycle.
Because we worked on a lot of these issues. That state law, there is state law about how the decibel level of a motor vehicle. That is state law. So I don't care if you're a new vehicle coming off the showroom and you're above the 80 decibel level, you're breaking the law. Period. Full stop. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
That's good.
For motorcycles, they're actually on motorcycles. They actually get a tag on their engine because they are regulated by the EPA on decimal levels. And so, and again, they have to follow the state law as well. So, and motorcycles do tend to be slightly noisier than your average car because of safety issues. But there are also laws on the book, state laws, that say this. And what we're doing here with the noise cameras would be someone who is already in violation of the state law and going above that. So it's already against the law.
Good.
Just wanted to
Thanks
clarify.
for the explanation. Councilmember Lukey.
Thank you. I in sort of wrapping my head around this and other things, right? And some of you sitting up there know how much I care about the other things too that are all embedded in this. And we got the street racing bill done last year. That's helpful to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez's point about speed and noise kind of going hand in hand. Speed, noise, and shenanigans going hand in hand. And, this is just a noise violation only. It won't deal with whether or not there was modification to the vehicle at all, right? And the only way we can do that presently is if there's an actual traffic stop, correct?
Yeah, but I would also suggest that a police officer might not be able to make that determination.
Right.
Especially with many emergency repair orders, it's required that the vehicle be taken to a mechanic.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. So if there's a, like, if I'm driving with a headlight out and I get pulled over, they give me a little printout and it tells me to go get my headlight fixed. Which, by the way, I learned how to change on my old car. I don't know how to do it on my new car. But that tells me what I need to do and gives me a certain amount of time to get it done, right? In this case, though, I mean, we know we have a law that says you can't do a thing, but we don't have a great way of enforcing it, which is not uncommon in laws that we have. We identify a problem, so we declare the thing should not happen. You should not modify your muffler, but we don't have a way of actually tangibly in the day-to-day world enforcing it. So I mean, and I signed on as a co-sponsor to this bill because I do think it's important to take a stab at doing the things. You're 100% right. We all get calls about this. I mean, one of the roads that I get called about the most running through my district is actually the ICC, right? And I know this isn't really going to go on the ICC per se, but they are thankful for the street racing bill. So I'm just trying to think about and just plant that flag that we need to find better ways of dealing with these things and to say what if or what could be the next step, because this is the start. But with this, where we find that then violations are issued because the first time it's a warning and then you get a violation and then you've got, a laundry list of other things that you've had repeated violations for that aren't getting taken care of. We need to think about what we're doing to make that stick, to make that work. Because if it's a lot of niddly things all together and nobody bothers paying the fines or nobody feels like there's a consequence or nobody is going to do anything, at some point we have to say the cumulative effect of either your affirmative misconduct or your failures to take corrective action is going to yield this particular consequence, because without that, we can't cure the behavior that is causing problems for our residents, for our fellow motorists, etc. So my ask to all of you is to come back to us on an ongoing basis with what those things are, what could matter in the day-to-day, but it doesn't mean we don't take a step now. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Buns, I have a feeling this could be by acclamation. Do you actually want a motion to, or would by acclamation work?
Either is fine, Mr. Chair.
Are we good by acclamation? We have acclaimed. Okay. Thank
but
you.
there is one potential amendment. Do you want to
Okay.
consider it? I'm sorry.
All right,
I thought you were asking the question
All right,
for
go ahead.
future tense. Sorry. So there's one potential amendment for your consideration. Pages 5 and 6 of the staff memorandum. It just deals with, it's a staff memorandum dealing with trying to clarify the status of the recorded images under the Public Information Act. And other types of recorded images are explicitly exempt from the Public Information Act under state law. And these were not. However, there are probably other exemptions that could apply. But simply to clarify the council's intent and also the intent that the police department could adopt regulations as needed to clarify the status of these recorded images under the Public Information Act. The amendment would be after line 134 to add another uncodified section of the law that again would simply state the council's intent that these are exempt and specifically enable the police department to categorize the recorded images as sociological information, which would allow them to fit neatly under one of the multiple exemptions that might work for these.
Let me turn to the bill sponsor. You're okay? We're still acclaiming. Okay.
Okay.
We're good.
Acclaiming the amendment and acclaiming the bill
Okay.
as amended.
Thank you. Yes? No? Okay. Okay. And next, we're going to go to the next item. Oh, what'd you say?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marilyn's ready to get it in her backyard.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know it'll be in your backyard. I don't know that you want to a lane and a half in your backyard. Okay, so we're going to go to the next topic here, if I can figure out how to do this. Okay. And I guess, well, we still have the same panel, and with the addition of Ms. Farag, is there any opening statements from the committee? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. I appreciate this update on the traffic enforcement plan. And when we passed my legislation last year, the Safe Streets Act, one of the components of that was having a traffic enforcement plan. And I know that it was delayed, but because we were watching Annapolis to see what updates they might be able to provide us, just like the conversation we had about enabling more tools at our disposal, namely more automated traffic enforcement, more cameras, red light, speed cameras, and now we'll have noise cameras. So there's a lot more at our disposal to keep residents safe when they're out on the street. But just to level set this conversation, to date, we have had 290 pedestrian-involved crashes, 89 cyclist-involved crashes, 28 scooter-involved crashes, and 8 pedestrians have been killed. 2 people were killed just last week, and we have more work to do. And this plan is a critical component of that, and I appreciate this joint committee session and look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Farag, please.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that Mr. Kenny is not here today because he's up in PHP. So I just wanted to let you know that first. I've attached the automated traffic enforcement plan to your packet. I don't have much information here to provide you other than some discussion questions and just a very brief outlook of what they currently have in terms of speed cameras and red light cameras. They do have a PowerPoint presentation for you, so I just was going to turn it over to them and let them go through their information for you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. So just to open up, and Mr. Tippery is going to be breaking down a lot of what we intend to do, but this is, I spoke about this in my confirmation hearing not too long ago, but it seems like we always come around to a lot of times to how we deal with our staffing issues, and how we deal with that when we're dealing with violent crime is we look for other alternatives to deal with other things that the police do on the daily. And automated enforcement is one of those technologies that we rely upon to make our streets safer. So when we're looking at ways to expand things that we can almost flip a switch on. We just talked about, the noise abatement where there's a little bit of work to be done there, but a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, it's just a matter of turning the technology on. I'm very excited to say that we have, and we're going to talk about speed on green, which is speed enforcement at some of our red light, where we have red light cameras, and also distracted driving, which is, I think if you look at the numbers as far as the state's concerned, and even Montgomery County, it rivals what's killing people on our roadways to DUI. Distracted driving is a very serious issue. And then to Councilman Glass's point, we have some pedestrian safety technology that I think is going to be highly impactful to make a difference. The best thing about this is saturated, sustained enforcement. This enforces these laws in the rain, in the snow, in the cold, and the hot, and it's 24 hours a day in a lot of circumstances, which is great. And it takes the burden off of a human police officer doing this work. So with that, very, very excited about, number one, the program. I've been in and out of this program throughout my career, but I'm impressed that we've stuck with our original, the way that we operate this. It's got a lot of integrity. It's it's looked at all over the nation as a system that operates really well, and ultimately the best part about this is it's data driven. We're going where we have the issues, and that's ultimately where we're really kind of focused on. We're just not throwing darts on a dartboard. We're looking at the data and we're saying this is where we need to go. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Tippery.
Thank you. Morning, or good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
Still here?
Yeah.
So again, I put the PowerPoint presentation together because I wanted you guys to be able to take something back with you physically so you can see what we're looking at, and not just constantly taking notes like we have to do sometimes. So again, our mission is to improve safety on our area roadways around schools by deterring dangerous driving behaviors and ensuring compliance with traffic law. And we strategically place those cameras where Montgomery County is unique to some other jurisdictions, is that we'll take citizen complaints from their neighborhoods. We just categorize them on a list and we go one by one and we'll do an analysis of the roadways in their communities. And if the data is there and there's a need for us to put cameras in that location, then we will. A lot of jurisdictions don't offer that courtesy to everyday residents, and a lot of the locations that you'll see coming up in just a few slides are just that. They were complaints that came in from the residents of our county, not just law enforcement. They were backed up by our data for implementation, but all of them came from concerned citizens. Next slide. So just to reiterate that it's still that red light is a $75 civil fine. There's no points. Currently, we have 51 cameras in operation, but we're increasing. 5 should come online within the next 30 days or so. That's going to be all directions of Beers Mill Road and Aspen Hill Road. And currently, we're contracted for 5 additional cameras per year. We can get a few extra if we need to. Part of the issue is that when we request a camera, if it's a state intersection, there's a added layer other than the district that we have to go through. We have to go through the Office of Traffic Safety, and they have to go through. We have to justify it to them, and they have to go back and do another engineering analysis on top of that before they'll put the red light camera in. So they're very difficult to place. We were working on a red light camera in Colesville Road and Stewart Lane, where we had a pedestrian fatality at that location. It's been over a year trying to get that camera in. Finally, it's been turned over to engineering, so hopefully we'll have that in service again within the next 30 days once it goes through some testing. Very difficult to get those cameras in on especially state intersections. Next slide. This is our speed camera. Hit it again. There you go. For the speed cameras, again, it's a $40 fine, 0 points. We currently have no reciprocity with any other jurisdiction for each. That has come up in discussion, by the way, reciprocity. DC started the conversation with COG, the Council of Governments. That went to the Director of Virginia and the Governor of Virginia and the Governor of Maryland, and they haven't come to an agreement due to the fines that DC levies. We currently have 110 speed cameras in operation, 66 portable, 38 of those are fixed pole, and 6 mobile vans. You used to be able to tell the mobile vans because they were the short white vans. Yeah. Now they're whatever color was in stock. The contract was implemented post-COVID. If we took what we could get. We're going to get 10 cameras per year. 10 cameras should come online within the next 30 days for this year's allotment, and then we'll have 10 more coming, which will give us 140 speed cameras by 2026. Next slide. These are all the new locations that we just added. So those have all been posted in the paper of general circulation that the law requires. Last year, there was an attempt to remove that from the law of a newspaper of general circulation because for us, it's the Washington Post. And I believe that advertisement cost us around $10,000. The last one we put out was $30 because it had an insert. So this for 10,000 was just the Montgomery County edition in the Washington Post. Next. These are some of the commercially available enforcement capabilities we have available to us. We can do overheight, the HOV lane enforcement, bike lane, railroad crossings. Some of these are already being implemented and in use in other jurisdictions across the country. Distracted driving and seatbelt enforcement are what we're currently working on. We do have the move over law. That's actually, they put it in the light bars of the police cars. That hasn't been tested in the United States yet. That's overseas where it's currently being implemented. And we've worked on bus lane and, of course, the excessive noise we just spoke about. And we're looking at the proactive approach of all these emerging technologies to see how they would fit into our Vision Zero plan. So speed on green that the Assistant Chief just spoke about. So we still have to meet the requirements for the state that those locations, the speed limit has to be 35 or below currently. We discussed how we would implement that, so we did some analysis on what intersections were intersecting with roadways that were 35 miles an hour, an analysis of how many violations of red light we were getting through there, and then what would be the priority. Because if we're putting the camera at intersections where we have serious and fatal crashes, then why wouldn't we be enforcing speeds through those same areas as well? So we're looking to bring that online. We've already looked at 2 intersections. It's a additional fee for the contract, but we think it's worthwhile. Then the bus lane enforcement. We're currently working in a pilot with WMATA, DOT, and Hayden AI. Our people have already looked at their dashboard. We've worked through a series of, it was around 400 violations, potential violations that would have occurred on Georgia Avenue over the past few months while the red line was being worked on. So our folks have already looked at it, analyzed it. They did a 10-question analysis. Hayden AI and WMATA have been great to work with, and we continue those meetings weekly, and we're just discussing the next steps.
When the speed on green, would that be somebody that's going 12 miles over?
Yes.
It would be the same as if it was a regular speed camera.
Yes. And the priority would go towards, if you wouldn't get 2, you would just get the most serious violation, which would be the red light or the speed, but not.
I got you.
We are currently working on a graduated fine schedule. We've had some meetings with our elected officials in Annapolis that have already come up with some ways on how that's going to be built out. I've talked to some other jurisdictions. They want to see the high side of the violations, because currently we're seeing, since 2022, at 40 plus miles an hour, we're adding 100 violations per year. This year we're already at 233. And we'll probably cap that at a little over 300 by the end of the year of people going in our 35 mile an hour speed zones, 40 plus miles an hour.
They're going 40 miles an hour above the speed limit.
Correct. We're getting speeds on Georgia Avenue at around 117.
Say that a different way. In a 35 mile per hour zone, they're going 75?
At least. This is just 40 plus.
And how many of those tickets?
How many of those?
This year,
tickets,
233.
233.
We'll be well over 300 by the end of the year.
Grief.
Yeah. The speeds are getting higher.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and that goes with the graduated fine schedule. You know, we would like to see maybe suspension being added back into the law to, again, with compliance. You know, a $40 civil, that was when this program was implemented back in 2016, 2017. You know, you're not getting out of 7-Eleven under $40 anymore. So we definitely need some work to do on the graduated fine, and if we could get that suspension back in to hold people accountable, even if we put the suspension in at like you said, at the speed limit, at that 40 plus. Because I can pull a high speed report, and it'll give me the high speeds for whatever length of time, and I think the highest one I pulled was Georgia Avenue at Hewitt at 117. And it's nice to see that there's a violation next to it, but they get the same $40 violation as I do doing 42 and a 35.
All right, and is that at 1 o'clock in the morning? When are they doing this?
All times. I mean, it doesn't.
All the time?
Yeah, you'd be shocked at the time frames that these come in.
I'm shocked right now. I mean, that's unbelievable.
To know that there's a violation next to it, I mean, that gives you a little, that's some, gratification, I guess, that they're going to get a violation, but it's just you wish it would be higher. There'd be a little bit more to it.
I was going to jump in. I'll let you keep going. Sorry.
Go ahead.
And we're also working with Wade Holland and Vision Zero to get us access to that high incident network. It was very successful through the House last year and didn't get voted on in judiciary. So that's going to be Delegate Solomon is going forward with that bill again this year. This is what we're currently working on, is distracted driving. The technology is gotten to the point now where we can start to look back at getting this technology implemented into automated enforcement. You can see it's the distracted driving is the leading cause of motor vehicle crashes and fatalities in Maryland. So some of the positives and negatives. It's hands-free is clunky, hard for officers to see. So it's we've looked at some of the technologies before, trailer systems, two-part system where it sends an image to an officer that's down the street. Again, it's just very cumbersome. We can't really see if it's a measurable difference is being made. One of the system that we're currently working with will also have a messaging board, so we can keep the message off and we can see how many violations we're capturing. Then we turn the message board on and see how many people actually pay attention to what they're seeing and change their behavior at a specific location. And again, we're short-staffed on the sworn officer side, so any additional help we can get is much greatly needed. So these are currently deployed throughout the county as part of a pilot. So we know what the issues were previously when it came up, and that was that the cameras would be forward-facing, and that the clarity of the images could be an issue. So this vendor has worked with his system to be overhead enough that that would be an enforceable image. The out-of-focus image of the driver is intentional, that the AI creates that. We also know that we don't want the passenger compartment. We don't want children or spouses or anything that's sitting in that passenger seat, so that would actually be an enforceable, that's what the image would look like when it was mailed to the violator. That's the size of the unit. And there's another one that comes with a messaging board for public safety notifications on it. And these are the locations that have currently been tested. So yeah, it's once you see the numbers, it's pretty astonishing.
Go ahead.
Wow. That's it. That was my comment.
You got the next one? Here's another. So with this technology, it'll capture not only the cell phone usage, but it'll also capture seatbelt enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you notice, the image is blurred out enough that you can see the behavior without the clarity of seeing who's in the car. You can't even see the driver's face. You can't see what's in their lap. You can just see the violation, and the AI picks up that violation. And again, same thing. Now, on an enforceable image, the way the state law currently reads is that the enforceable registration would be from the rear. Once this would be, if we got to actually start deploying these and issuing some violations for it, the second image would be at the rear of the vehicle. And you see some pretty incredible stuff out there. So the company that we're currently working with, they just mocked up a violation as to what it would be in an evidence package. We kept it as separate from what we currently issue as possible, but getting the point across. And again, this is a standalone unit that we could deploy portably throughout the county. It's great to see that the companies are actually starting to develop this technology.
And I believe one thing that, if I'm not mistaken, is this also shows vehicle in motion, which is going to be a requirement.
Right.
So there'll be a video similar to like a red light violation.
Okay.
And that's it. Now the same company, although we don't have the images yet, one of the things that we're restricted from is like with your pedestrian safety bill is that this technology can be deployed inside of the central business district and do pedestrian violations. Not just the vehicle going through the red light, but actually the vehicle violating the pedestrians right away. So the AI will pick up the pedestrian in the crosswalk and then issue the violation to the vehicle, while keeping the image of the person out of the violation. That image needs to be either ghosted out or similar to those images, needs to be to the point where you can see the violation, but you can't see the unattended victim walking through the crosswalk.
Do we need to change the state law now to use this type of equipment?
Yeah. Yes. Because currently we're restricted from the central business district for whatever reason, but going down the road of pedestrian safety, I think that would be beneficial in legislation.
I agree. Do you have any addition?
So much to say. Yeah. So you have literally made this joint committee speechless.
Which in itself is something to say, is something not to say.
That's right. Wow. So where to begin? First, you mentioned it, but I want to accentuate it a little bit more. Georgia Avenue and Hewitt, where you said 230 tickets have been given to drivers who've gone over 75 miles per hour.
That's across the county, but that was the highest speed.
Okay, so that's the highest, the highest incident area. It is also the highest incident area for so many other things. I know we've all attended too many vigils along there for too many people who've been killed, and this reinforces why that is so important. I also want to recognize Wade Holland and Michael Paler, who do this work within the Department of Transportation and as our Vision Zero coordinator, and appreciate them being here too. So let's go back to this cell phone camera. Right now, there are 3 of them.
At least, yeah.
At least. And this is a pilot program as well? Mm-hmm. Are people actually getting tickets that they have to pay?
No.
Okay. Talk through this a little bit more.
Yeah, so when we were, Director Tippery was starting to work with this vendor, really, in order to come here, we wanted to come with data. And so we have that data. And the idea, once again, we picked locations throughout the whole county, not in just one particular area, where we thought it would be beneficial to run these systems. And the numbers that we're getting, and we'll be able to give you a full report, but that was the whole point of this. This wasn't about giving out fines or even giving out warnings to violators right now. It was just to collect data to show you, the council, and then also the county executive's office, that this is technology that's desperately needed as far as automated enforcement. And I think what we even recognize is we saw, or we are seeing, far more violations that we ever really even wrapped our brain around. So this is something that I think is going to be beneficial moving forward.
And so what is that process moving forward?
Well, in fact, I'll just let.
It starts with the legislation in Annapolis. We need to get a bill drafted and start carrying it forward and continue to collect this data as we move through legislation. I've talked to Prince George's and Anne Arundel, and they're also as interested as we are in this technology, and they're anxious to pilot it next. DC actually has a grant to study it, but we started first, so Charles has to wait his turn. But
So thank you for that. I remember a number of years ago, there were conversations about this type of technology being needed. And at the time, it was discussed as being affixed to buses or other types of infrastructure, if I can call it that. Is this different in this way anyway, or these are fixed cameras? Are they going to go on to any other types of vehicles and move?
It'll be fixed, pulled, and portable, like we currently run with Speed. The same vendor will do. He also has speed and red light capabilities and stop sign. It's the same vendor that has the stop sign enforcement in school zones in Prince George's County. That's where the conversation started, was actually at a couple conferences for lifesavers, which is all about distracted driving, drinking and driving, and that everybody wants the technology, but nobody was willing to start testing it, and we're willing to start testing it, and let's see if we can actually get this law going.
Very interesting. I have more questions, but I'll let colleagues ask there, so thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Please.
Thank you, and thank you all for being willing to go ahead and try to test these things. You know, new technology and new adaptations can be challenging. There's also a lot to dive into, but I appreciate that you all take a deep dive into understanding it from all angles to figure out how best it might work here or might not, depending on what the technology is. So how many of our current red light cameras are positioned in places where the speed limit is over 35 miles an hour, so not subject to a speed camera?
That's the lion's share of our cameras. We're talking like maybe 5 to 7 are in locations where it's 35.
Right. The bulk are not.
Right.
And yet that's our highest area of need. And by very nature, if you were going to do the speed on green combined with, of course, we need that change to state law, which I'm very hopeful will move forward to allow us to do that in an increased speed area. And you mentioned that it would only prioritize one, but it could only by its very nature be either you went through at an excessive speed on green or it's triggered because the light is red, but it would not necessarily capture the speed on the red light passage. Or how would that work technologically? It would do both.
It would do both.
Okay, so you would know the rate of speed at which the person went through the intersection. Yeah. Okay.
We actually pull that data now.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to see that. I think that based on everybody's at the moment when you talked about how many violations you were getting per day on the other technology that you were testing that weren't yet issuing violations, I think that's important. I wanted to flag for Captain Jensen to keep these numbers coming and keep them at the ready for other things down the pike, because those are important. And again, when we're talking about modifying behaviors, anything that we can do that also enforces the consequence or gives the judiciary additional tools with which to help manage these things is important. And I appreciate the conversations amongst the multiple jurisdictions to help with the non-payment of fines and other issues. But we also need to be able to give the judiciary tools to do their job. Thanks.
Thank you. Please, Vice President Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the report and the presentation today. One question I had, looking at the report we were given, we had a couple of charts on the number of citations issued by red cameras and the speed cameras. Do we have the dollar amounts that would correspond with that?
Yes.
Because I think that would also be interesting, going back to the conversation about reciprocity with other jurisdictions, to know what we're looking at in terms of the dollar amount there. And also just to ask, as you're looking at legislation for Annapolis, I'm sure you're well aware of, since Mr. Allen worked on this in DC, that the steer law just went into effect on October 1st, and I think it accomplishes a number of the things that you discussed. And I don't know if having something that was similar to what DC is doing in terms of the graduated violations and things. I always find putting my regional cap on that having things like that that are the same across our region sometimes is really helpful to residents. So because DC put that in place, maybe with little oomph there to get something through in Annapolis. And I know in DC, they also, in the steer law, also put through that their attorney general can come after big violators who have long outstanding tickets and things. So I don't know if there are other things that you saw in the steer law that DC is doing that you think we could do here. I think much of it has to be done through Annapolis.
It has to be done through Annapolis.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see that they could also require a governor to be installed on your vehicle.
Yeah.
In the steer law.
Yeah. So
that was
it'll be interesting to see how all that goes. And I'll just put a plug in on the bus lanes and working on violations there. I know because of a lot of the work going on in the Silver Spring area this summer, we put in the temporary bus lanes, which we've now extended. The frustration from people are when people violate that. And they're, and that's what I hear a lot from residents when they're obeying the law and they say, I'm sitting in traffic, but then I see people going to the bus lanes and we don't have enforcement. So whatever we can do to help support those conversations move forward with WMATA and DOT and look at what we can do, because I think we're going to be seeing more and more dedicated bus lanes throughout the county. And I don't know, I don't like frustrated residents, and I know you all don't either. So
it's interesting to see the technology at work. I mean, Hayden AI has done some great things. They have all the major cities. They have WMATA, New York, Chicago. But to watch the system on the back end work and how fast it works, because with their technology and with the DC law, there's two separate violations. There's the bus stop violation, and then there's the bus lane violation. The lane violation is $100, and the stop is $200. But actually, they just program that into the AI for the bus, and it already determines that as it's traveling down the roadway. So it's interesting to see this technology develop.
Great. And we did get enabling legislation last session out of Annapolis for the bus lane.
Yep.
So great. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you. Anybody else, please?
Yeah.
Please.
Vice President Stewart picked up about the bus lanes that I wanted to ask about. So can you just share some more thought as to why we have prioritized some of the other aspects and not the bus lanes?
Oh, we're still working on the bus lanes.
Okay.
It's those meetings are weekly. Hayden AI presents us with evidence packages. We discuss the images. Again, we have access to the dashboard of the processing. And again, they're great to work with, and so is WMATA.
Great. And then with we were talking about equitable distribution of the noise cameras before. What are your thoughts? Or where can you share with us, since it's a pilot, where these 3 cell phone stations are?
Do you have them?
Yeah.
So
I call them stations. What do you call them?
That's stations fine.
Okay.
Mobile systems.
There you go.
We specifically talked about this because at first we let the vendor. He kind of did a little bit of homework on Montgomery County himself, which was pretty interesting. But what we did was I specifically said that I wanted a system up in Olney, I wanted a system in Germantown, I wanted a system in Silver Spring or Bethesda. So I kind of wanted to pick points in different parts of the county. And then we were able to actually, Captain Jensen was able to supply some data for violations and for pedestrians being struck, things like that, that's where we, I think there's a correlation with the pedestrian being struck sometimes with the fact that somebody's driving distracted, right? Yep. So we were able to take that data and go to locations, or at least provide the vendor with locations where we believed it would be a valued place to go. Again, looking at the data.
Yeah. So I'm glad you raised that, because I'll end on this point. There's a lot of research about road incidents and why the United States leads the world in terms of people being hit and killed on the road. And you might think it's because we have wider roads and we have bigger cars, but the data actually boils down to the fact that the types of cars that we have are automatic. And in most of the other world, they are manual. And when you are driving manual stick shift, you do not have the luxury of looking at your cell phone or any other technology. And New York Times and a bunch of others have documented this research, right? Because there's so many other aspects we easily point to, especially size of car and width of road. But our vehicles that we choose to drive allows us to be distracted. And so we got to pinpoint that and make sure that people are focused on the road and who else is on the road. So appreciate this work.
That's good.
Thank you.
Good enough. Anybody else? Please.
Just one question. We're talking about the red light cameras in the speed. Does the red light camera, can it detect violation of no right on red?
Yes.
Okay, and that with the speed as well, the same thing?
We do, that's when, before we put in a red light camera, we also do a video validation. So it's a third-party vendor that comes out and sets up and tells us where the problem is. Because when we say you put in a red light camera, that doesn't mean all the intersections. That means we've analyzed where the problem is, and that's the direction we need to enforce. Okay. And I work great with my partners, Wade and Michael Paler behind me, on determining that. Because if it's the crash data and conversations that I have with Wade that we determine where these cameras would be more effective at.
Great, super, thanks.
Anybody else? Anything else, Ms. Frog? Thank you all. We've said this all day long to many first responders, et cetera, but thank you for what you do. You never get enough thanks, but we're most appreciative, and we appreciated the update. Thank you. Right, bye-bye.
Los temas a discutir en esos cafecitos con Mariela. Me suena tan interesante que yo quiero participar.
Claro que sí. Bueno, realmente los temas me vienen a través de la